This is the podcast that we ask our guests from in front and behind the camera, how did they get their foot in the door? What was the key to unlocking their success? What's their story?
Our guest today is a writer-director who's helmed some of the biggest action spectacles of the past decade, including San Andreas. We chat about how he went from a short film to Hollywood's sequel to Cats and Dogs. He puts to bed the rumours that Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson is hard to work with, and we discuss his latest movie, Netflix's sci-fi actioner Atlas, starring Jennifer Lopez. Our guest today is writer-director Brad Peyton.
And I'd love to ask, because my podcast is usually about, how someone's career starts, the stepping stones to success. And
Yeah.
obviously, you're here now. You've done so many amazing films. You've done series. You've done all these great things. Um, where did that love of, writing, directing, where did that come from for you?
Uh, I mean, I guess the probably the very beginning is the fact that my mom is incredibly creative. And so like I grew up in a household where all of the ornaments on our Christmas tree, my mom made them all. Like all of the artwork in our house, my mom made it all. And so and she would by the way, this would like she's way humble and like she would blush and run out of the room if she was here watching this. Like there's no she does not want any accolades whatsoever. But like that's that's just the environment I grew up in. Like if our blankets, my mom made them. Some of my clothes growing up, my mom made them. You know, it was like that's just the environment I grew up where it's like creativity was just a normal thing that was always around me. And then I think I was always visual and I was
Mm.
always fascinated with movies. We didn't have a TV for a long time when I was a kid. And then when we got a TV, there was only two channels. And so it wasn't like I fell in love with television, but we had a VCR and we had, movie rental places. And so I just ended up, renting movies. I was very introverted. And so I would rent movies constantly and then watch them and rewatch them. And now,
Mm.
like, I've talked to other filmmakers and other people who go, oh, that was my existence too. But it was like I would rent a movie and watch it. And as soon as it was done, rewind it and watch it again. And if I really liked it, I would watch it the next morning again. So that was like a very regular thing for me to
Mm.
do. And no one in my house thought it was weird. They just let me do it. But yeah, I mean, a lot of it just came for me from like a place of being allowed to be creative in a sort of society that there wasn't a lot of that. Like I grew up in a very rural place. So yeah, I think it was a lot to do with just how my household was.
Mm-mm. Oh, I miss those days of Blockbuster and being able to rent a couple of movies over the weekend and just watching them back to back. It's funny, it's one of those things now, there's so much choice. I feel like you have obviously Netflix and things like that, that it's harder to choose. When you went into Blockbuster, it was like, I know what I'm going to get. Like if there was the new movie out that weekend or whatever.
Yeah.
Now you're like sport for choice. Um, but yeah, I mean, that's nice to hear that it's kind of a love for movies that brought you into this. And we've had a couple of we've had quite a few directors on the show, and there always seems to be they always say that essentially whenever someone was training to be a director or if they were at drama school, if they were doing something, it was like everyone in the room wanted to be a director. Did you
Mm.
find that there was a lot of competition when you were starting out before you had that first success, doing short films and trying to find
Yeah.
your way?
Yeah, I did, but I think that like looking back, sorry, I'm Canadian and it's very strange to talk about myself. It's just like that's not part of our culture. Like
Yeah,
to
sure.
so when you're like basically you're like brag about yourself and I'm like this is very me to do. I don't know how I want to make this come off in the correct way, but
Yeah.
went to film school for 3 months and I was only there for 3 months because I asked for my money back because I
Mm.
was like this is not for me. And they were uh, uh, nice enough to prorate my experience and give me my money back. Because the thing about it that I didn't realize is I had done so much work on my own that when
Mm.
I went to film school, I was like, oh, you guys don't read every book on filmmaking. You guys don't watch every behind the scene. You know, I was like absorbed with it. That was what
Mm.
I did, like now I didn't actually go out and make like, there's a lot of stories of like, I went out and made short films. Blah, blah, blah. I grew up in a very small place and I didn't know anyone with a video camera. Like
Mm,
that just didn't really exist. Like there wasn't much of an opportunity to go sort of experiment. I had to go to film school and kind of realize, okay, this is the time where I should be shooting stuff. And I need to get out of this like theoretical place and actually go do this on my own. And so
mm,
a lot of people were like, I want to be a director, but they hadn't done the sort of the homework that I feel like I had done by that point. And then I had built up this urge to make a film for so long that I knew it's like I have to go do this. And I think the difference in my mindset than some other people was I have to make this successful or I may not get this shot again. So
mm,
every single thing I did it like it was the last thing I was ever going to get to do. And that's why I was able to have so much success young, because if I went to make a short film, I was like, this has got to be good. Like this has to be seen by people. I have to get this into festivals. And when you have that sort of mindset, you end up even exceeding your own expectations because you're pushing so hard.
mm,
And yeah, that was sort of my approach from the very onset was every shot I take, you know, I'm trying to hit a home run. I'm not trying to get on base. I'm trying to hit a home run. And so yeah, it was like, yeah, very early on, I felt like I was separating myself from people because there was like a lackadaisical sense to it. And I also, in some ways, am lucky because I grew up with sort of no safety net. You know, I'm not from like a wealthy family or anything like that. I had to make it work or it wasn't going to work, which means I don't get to do this. So
mm,
I've kind of always kept that mentality of like, I have to make this work because this is what I do. And I need to show people this is what I do. And so I had that same thing long before I was directing big movies. I had that when I was a kid and was like, okay, you're going to give me. I remember they gave me 500 feet of film and a camera and a DP. And I swear I treated that 500 feet of film like this was the only 500 feet of film I would ever shoot. Now, little did I know that film was going to go away and it'd become digital. And that was almost the only 500 feet of film I actually shot. But my point is that I was like, this might be it. Like
mm,
tomorrow, this might not happen again. So today needs to be the day, you know? And that mentality is sort of the thing that allowed me to separate myself from a lot of other people coming up. And I could just see it in their behavior. I was like, man, like I'm coming from like very little, and this is like a big deal to be here. And clearly you can go do 10 other things because you're like having a just partying and having a time. And I'm like, no, I need to like make this my career or else I don't have a plan, you know? So yeah, it was just sort of like my work ethic mentality and sort of, go for broke kind of approach is what I think separated me in film school from people, basically.
mm, mm.
I hope
And
that
you're,
sounded Canadian and humble enough because this is a
oh no,
very,
definitely. I'm British, so I completely understand. Yeah, it's all like Americans can talk about themselves in a positive light, and Americans are different to English Canadian people. It's kind of, it can be awkward. So thank you for humoring me with that question.
no problem.
Um, and I mean, I'm a big fan of your movies, and so this has been a real pleasure. But I do want to ask as well, like you've worked a lot with The Rock, and
Yeah.
I was disappointed. I didn't see him in this movie, and I was like, I'm sure he's gonna pop up somewhere. Like, how's the experience working with him? And like, you've worked so many times with him, and I hear there's rumors there's going to be a San Andreas 2 as well. I don't know
Right.
if that's true, but yeah,
I mean,
what's the experience with working The Rock?
it was great. I mean, obviously, I came up with him and sort of learned how to be a filmmaker with him. And he's such a giving, graceful guy. And we had so much success. And he was an amazing collaborator. I had nothing but an awesome time with him. And San Andreas 2 was in the works for a while. Like there was a script for it.
Mm,
I don't know. I never say never. I never know what's going to happen. I'm always open to it. I mean, Dwayne's one of those guys where it's like I've done 3 movies with him. I do 3 more.
mm.
Yeah, he was awesome.
I love that film. I love those sort of, disaster movie type, and it feels like there hasn't been one for a while. So I've got my fingers crossed that there's going to be another San Andreas. But in terms of, looking at your career, and I wasn't aware of your first couple of projects, like the bigger ones, but how did you go? Because our audience are like, you know, they're filmmakers, they're people trying to get their foot in the door.
Yeah.
How did you go from short films to, you know, Cats and Dogs, the sequel to Cats and Dogs is a pretty big film. So
Yeah.
how did you go from like you know, a short film to a big Hollywood movie? What was that stepping stone there?
Look, I think the thing that people have to remember when they're going out to be a filmmaker is there is no real blueprint for it.
Mm,
Like how Cats and Dogs 2 came to be is very specific and very random at the same time, right? It was like I did a round of meetings. They would send me to meet all these producers. Most of them I'd never heard of before, even if they were massive producers. I'm not from Hollywood. I didn't
mm,
know Hollywood. I grew up in northeastern Canada. You know, like this was a world that was new to me. And so specifically with that, I went into this guy's office. He had 3 movie posters up. One of them was Cats and Dogs. And I said to him, hey, if you ever do a sequel to Cats and Dogs, I'd be interested in it. Now I had like made short films. They had kind of popped off. You know, Tom Hanks had flown me out to LA to like meet on a project. David Heyman, who did
Wow.
Harry Potter, flew me to Manhattan to meet on a project. So there was like rumblings of like, oh, there's this talented kid and he's, you know, meeting people. So this was like many, many moons ago. So, you know, my advice to people is to prioritize those meetings because you never know what's going to come from them.
Mm,
And
mm,
to really kind of, you know, be as positive as you can, be as open-minded as you can, because you absolutely do not know where the next opportunity is going to come. I
yeah.
feel like the way I was raised was really beneficial in this way. Like I remember even being young, my dad saying stuff like, you know, you're going to meet the same people on the way up as you will on the way down, right? Which is basically like this pleasant Canadian way of saying be nice to everybody, you know? And so, but I took that, you know, I took that to heart and I still take that to heart because, you know, I've met assistants who I'm like, oh, this guy's a really good guy. And like 5 years later, he's producing a movie for Jerry Seinfeld. I mean, that's literally someone I know who, so,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Seinfeld hadn't made any, I don't know if he's ever made a movie since like the B movie. So it was like, you just don't really know. And so if you're positive, optimistic, open-minded, hardworking, and you
Mm,
put yourself out there, there's chances of good stuff coming back. You know,
mm,
it's,
mm.
I have no really other advice than that. I mean, if you have an uncle who runs a studio, utilize that relationship. I did
Yeah.
not have that relationship. So for like the people that are like coming up and they're just, you know, I would say, you know, put your work forward. Like, do not be shy about it. Put yourself forward. Do not be shy about it. Don't be a humble Canadian if you can be. Like, you know, put all your credentials out there for people to see it, or find someone like I did who's going to blast your name around Hollywood, which is what I got my agents to do,
Mm,
and just go out and meet as many people as you can because that leap is tough, but it's also very unpredictable where it's going to come from. I've heard
mm.
so many stories of, oh, I met a guy in a coffee shop and he funded my movie. Like I've heard those stories. Like it just happens. So you know, it's a little bit of the what is it? The squeaky wheel gets the oil, or the squeaky wheel gets the grease, that type of thing. It's
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah, you
yeah.
just have to kind of go out there and do it in a really positive way. And
Mm,
generally good things come from that.
mm. That's wicked, man. Because my next question was going to be, what's your advice? But you wrapped it all up very nicely into that question as well. Check out the Patreon at patreon.com/life and film, where you'll get episodes early and uncut, amongst other treats. And don't forget to follow us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. If you enjoy this episode, please leave us a positive rating. Add us on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok at Life and Film Pod, and find our video episodes on YouTube by searching Elliot James Langridge Life and Film. Essentially, please like and subscribe everything. It makes a huge difference. Thank you. This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. Do you work in the film industry? Are you freelance? Or perhaps you have a 9 to 5? No matter what you do, mental health affects us all. I struggled early on in my career with the uncertainty of if and when I would ever work again, struggling to pay my bills, or simply with anxiety. Don't know about you, but being an actor, it's very important for me to maintain structure in the downtimes, and I found not only exercise, but talking to someone for me was a game changer. And so Life in Film has partnered with BetterHelp to provide you with access to the largest online therapy service in the world.
And it can all be done from the comfort of your own home, from a phone, tablet or laptop. No commute, cutting down travel costs, and most importantly, it's affordable. With over 1,000 therapists in the UK, BetterHelp can provide access to mental health professionals with a wide variety of expertise in mental health. If you need someone to talk to and you're thinking of giving therapy a go, BetterHelp is a great option. And being a listener of the podcast, you get 10% off. That's 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/lifeinfilm. That's betterhelp.com/lifeinfilm. And back to the show.
Good morning, Atlas. Time to wake up.
I'm awake.
Agent Atlas Shepard has spent years of her life hunting the artificial intelligence known as Harlan. Originally engineered to advance humanity, he instead nearly ended it.
If you really want to try to capture Harlan, you need me on that mission.
Mayday! We are under attack!
What do I do?
Stop it!
Oh my god.
Okay, this is out of control. Okay, this is out of control.
First off, really enjoyed the movie. I mean, it's a crazy film full of huge special effects, and I'd love to ask how did this project come about for you? How did it kind of start your end?
So basically, probably since San Andreas, I've said I really want to make a sci-fi movie, and I'd really like to do a movie with a strong female star. And so I've said that so many times. Eventually, it had to lead to something. And the script kind of came through people who I'd said that to. And so initially, I got the screenplay like 5 years ago, and it wasn't quite the movie you see now, but it had the main story of this woman who had, had this traumatic experience and had this mistrust for technology, who got stuck inside of a mech suit. So I was like, okay, this is a fantastic idea. Like, there's a lot here that we can play with. So yeah, that's sort of how it came up initially.
It's one of those movies as well. I didn't really know what to expect from the trailer. And I didn't expect so much of it to be in the suit. And when you think, oh, it's going to be in the suit so much, you think, oh, how do you keep this interesting? But you really did. Did you have any kind of worries that, a lot of the movie is going to be inside this tech suit, how to keep it interesting, how to keep it moving? And
I knew going into this, so I wanted to do a movie like this because I wanted to do something that was truly unique and that I just didn't see out there. I'd never seen this movie. I'd never heard of a movie like this. So that was what led me to go make this movie initially. Saying that, I also knew going into a movie that's unlike any movie I'd seen, there was going to be challenges where I'm like, okay, there's going to be things that come up that are just going to be unlike anything I've ever pulled off. But that fear is also kind of part of the excitement. And at this point in my career, I'm okay figuring some of these things out as I go, because I just now sort of have the confidence of like, okay, no matter what happens, I'm going to get there. I know what I'm doing. I know how to figure this stuff out. So the most like difficult thing, in all honesty, was figuring out how to shoot her in the mech suit so that I could sort of allow her to be as raw and emotional as possible. Because I only got the mech suit 2 days before we went to camera. So I got this suit. I saw it. I stood in it. I said, okay, great. This is exactly what I was, I'd seen like builded like pieces of it, but I'd never seen it finished and I'd never seen it put together. And I got it 2 days before, and then we had to put it up on the motion base, the gimbal that moves. So when it walks and runs and everything, but I'd never put a camera on it. I'd never had it to put a camera on it. The biggest difficulty was going, okay, Jen's incredibly intuitive as an actor, right? So she's the most intuitive performer I've ever worked with, meaning like you have to sort of support her and sort of allow her to find her way without infringing on it. Because I think if you infringe on a intuitive actor, they're going to shut down a little bit, or they're going to overthink. And so what I ended up doing with the mech suit was I figured out if I can put 4 or 5 cameras on her at once, I can do almost the entire scene in one run. So and I drove my DP crazy. John Schwartzman's brilliant. And thank God he loved me, because he was just like, you're too nice. I can't say no to you, but you're driving me crazy. Like, how am I going to get light in on her, you know? Because I had cameras everywhere around her. So like, for example, the way we would block a scene would be like when she first crashes and she gets exasperated. So I would say, okay, this camera is down here. This is for when the map comes out and you have to like look at the map. So that's what this camera's for. When you get exasperated, can you get exasperated this way? I'll put a camera out here and we'll be looking through the glass. And then I'll put a close up and a medium here. And so I could talk her through my plan. But then it was just her and Greg talking. And I was like, there's no camera position. We're not doing the scene twice. We're just going to go do the scene. And that's how we approached the movie. So what I found it allowed was her to be really free and just act and not think about, oh, I've got to hit this thing and this timing of this and this camera move and da-da-da. Like, she was just able to go do her thing. So I knew that was going to be challenging. The real challenge was figuring it out on the fly with Jen in the cockpit on a motion base, making sure we do everything safe. Like, you know, sometimes it would take like 2 hours to put the cameras on because we had to make sure the cameras were safe, lock 2 operators up there, lock 2 other cameras down, you rehearse it with a stunt double, and then put Jen in, you know? So it was a very complicated role or approach in that sense. The thing that I actually think makes the movie interesting and why you're like responding and you're like, I don't exactly understand why it's so interesting. I think what it is it really just comes down to the relationship between Smith and Atlas. The thing about it is, it's like, it's a buddy cop movie if like one of the cops is the car, you know, it's like, it's like Knight Rider, like on steroids, you know, it's this fun dynamic between the two of them. And so as soon as I heard Greg doing scenes with her, I realized this is going to be as entertaining as I pictured it, you know, because it was all about their banter in the middle. And because Greg was not really on set with her, he was sitting in his sound booth next to my monitors. I could really easily, without kind of bothering her, I could just say, Greg, I want you to read the scene twice as fast this time. And he'd be like, okay, like, what's that going to do to Jen? And I'm like, well, let's see. But it made it fresh, right? Because then like the next take, she has this machine just spouting his dialogue at her. And she's like, you know, like, so now it became this really fun experiment in a lot of ways. Now, obviously a little nerve wracking when you're like experimenting on this level, but I had such a tight plan going into it that when these things came up, I was able to kind of shift gears and think on the fly. But yeah, I think what you're sensing is you have this insanely large canvas of this alien planet, and then you have this really, really fun dynamic between Smith and Atlas. So it's really hard to get bored, even if you're stuck inside of a mech suit. And I'd like to point out that if I were stuck anywhere, I would love to be stuck in a mech suit on an alien planet, just because I feel like I would be entertained. I might be freaked out because I'm probably going to die, but I would still be entertained while I was trying to survive.
Yeah. Well, I was going to make the comparison to the film Buried or Phone Booth. There's that element of, you know, there's things going on around the character, but they're stuck in this one place. But it's obviously, as you say, if you're going to be anywhere in a mech suit on an alien planet, it's a much vaster scale than any of those other films.
This movie's really hard to compare to other movies, and I know that because I had to go pitch it. And so like the closest thing I had was it's Castaway in space if Wilson talked back. That was like my pitch to what the movie was going to be. It was a very, I mean, I like that problem. It's tougher because, you know, you're going into rooms and you're trying to pitch a movie and you're like, this movie's really difficult to pitch because it's impossible to say it's Jurassic Park meets Back to the Future or whatever you would say. You know, it's like, I don't know how to pitch this movie. It's so, there's so much going on in it. But, you know, luckily Netflix saw the potential in this. And, you know, they've been amazing partners. They believed in the movie right away. They really supported me going and getting Jen for the movie. And, you know, I feel lucky because I don't know if there's another studio in Hollywood that would make a movie like this besides Netflix. So, yeah, it was an interesting one to kind of put together. And I know it's hard to wrap like what it is in a sentence because it's always been hard to wrap what this is in a sentence.
And as you say, Netflix are really that they've got the freedom, haven't they, that a lot of other studios don't have. And I noticed that one of the writers is also a writer on Daybreak, which is obviously a show that you co-created a few
Yeah.
years back. Is it kind of like that? Where every time you do a job, you've got kind of the familiar people around you, and you bring in people that you've worked with before.
Yeah, I mean, so I've worked with the same production designer, the same editor. A lot of times it's the same VFX team, same AD, similar writers. What happens is you sort of build the people that you trust and that you are creatively in sync with.
Mm.
And Aaron came on board because I had such a great time with him on Daybreak. And also, he's really good with humanity and humor and character. So he sort of picked up where Leo kind of left off. Leo kind of set the world up and set the concept up. And then when we had to like really get into the nuance of like defining character and voices, that's where Aaron sort of jumped in. But yeah, I think that when you work with the same people, there's a lot of shorthand. They generally know what you want. So they can kind of like, you can, first of all, you can jump past the step of, hey, it's nice to meet you. And there's like an awkward 2 weeks of just trying to figure out who this person is. You know who this person is. You know what their skill set is. You know what they want, what you want. There's a lot of just, okay, let's just get into this movie. And I think as you grow as a filmmaker and take on more and more complex roles, it's really essential to have those people around you. You need support. This is not an art form that you can just do on your own. And so, yeah, I look at my role as, you know, I'm the creative head who's here to allow all the other creatives to be successful. But the more I can bring in creatives who know my taste and know what I want, the better, because it will just get to the finish line much quicker and much easier.
Mm-mm. Oh no, I mean it must be you know, if you can bring in people you've worked with before, as you say, it's that shorthand,
Yeah.
yeah, it must be a lot easier, and you know that someone can do that job and you know their talents. In terms of the casting, you mentioned there briefly, like going after Jennifer Lopez. Was that always like in mind from, you know, the early days of bringing the script up and writing, like with the writing process and everything else? Was there always her in mind for the part? I mean, she's kind of a dream
She
actress
is.
to have in your movie.
In all honesty, I rarely write for an actor in mind because you're writing like 5 years before you're
Yeah.
actually going to go make the movie. So to me, it's just not that realistic. So she came up once the script was basically done or like 90% done. And the thing about Jen that I was really attracted to, and she has so many unbelievable talents, was the fact that she's known as a very, very hard worker. And I knew this movie was going to be tough. Like you couldn't go and take on this movie and not be into long days, physical days. You had to embrace all of that. And also just like, I know that she is incredibly brave. She's like a very courageous person. If you look at her, where she comes from and where she's gotten, it's kind of unbelievable, right? So this is someone who is a singer, a dancer, an actor. She has done it all. And I needed someone who was going to be okay and comfortable inside of a mech suit by herself for 5 or 6 weeks. And that's a very daunting task for any actor, really. So the fact that she had this skill set of going out and performing to stadiums on her own, I thought, okay, this is probably our best chance at someone who's going to really embrace this. And she just had the right temperament. And so when I met with her, I was just like, this is perfect. She's going to nail this. This is going to be amazing. And I think that all of that and my approach of working with her really helped result in a great performance because to me, she got really raw, really vulnerable. And so it was this nuance. It wasn't just like, I'm just a badass hero. It's, I have lows, I have highs. She kind of felt out the whole range. So yeah, she was amazing. And then I feel like I got really lucky with Sterling and Simu and Mark Strong and Abe and Greg, like the whole cast. First of all, it's very strange to go to set and go like, that's a movie star. Oh, and that's a movie star. Oh, and that's a movie star. And so like, obviously Sterling got nominated for Academy Award after, but I'll tell you, the first time I met Sterling, I was like, oh, this guy vibes like a movie star, like, and then he shows up on set and he acts like a movie star. Like he just has that presence, Simu's the same way. You're like, this guy starred in a Marvel movie. And then you meet him and you're like, I get why he starred in a Marvel movie. This guy has the movie star thing. So it was a really, really potent cast, and every day I was just like in awe of what they could do. It was really exciting to direct them.
Oh, it's an amazing cast, and I was excited to see because I didn't realize that Mark Strong was in it, so I'm always excited to see Mark Strong in anything.
I mean,
He's absolutely brilliant.
I saw Body of Lies and I was instantly like, who's that guy?
Mm,
Because I mean, he's, toe to toe with Leonardo DiCaprio. And I didn't
mm,
know who he was at that point. But when I saw that movie, he's who stood out to me. I told him, I was like, as soon as I saw Body of Lies, I was like, I got to work with that guy. And literally from Body of Lies till Atlas, I tried to get him in every single one of my movies. He's
oh,
always
really?
working, so it's impossible to get him. And then, yeah, it was just like I would watch everything he did because it was just like he had, I don't know, if you can go toe to toe with Leonardo DiCaprio and put him in his place in scenes, you're like,
Mm.
okay, this guy is formidable, And so, yeah, Mark in particular was like a little bit of a director dream come true because I'd just been following his career for so long.
Yeah, he's fantastic, and he's one of those people that if I'm being English, I know he's English, but a lot of people wouldn't even realize that he's English.
Yeah.
He's absolutely brilliant. But yeah, man, this has been wicked, and thank you. It's really inspiring, and I'm a big fan. So thank you so much for taking the time, and all the best with the film.
Thank you. May 24th, watch it. Watch it twice. You can just, when you're done, just do it again. Like, if you're a
Keep it
film fan,
going.
and then the algorithm loves the 2 thumbs up. So for all the people out there,
Oh,
two
we've
thumbs
already
up.
done it. We've already done the 2 thumbs up.
Perfect.
Yeah,
Perfect.
all good, man. Well, thank you very much, and best of luck with the rest of the interviews.
Awesome, man. Cheers.
Cheers, man. Take care.
All right, later.
Thank you to our guest Brad, and thank you to Road PR. As always, thank you to our sponsor, BetterHelp.